Okay, thank you everyone. Looks like we've got everybody, and if a few join in here, that's great. So everyone, thank you for joining us today for the OsmoTECH HT live virtual demonstration. With me today, who will be assisting me as we go along and with the questions, is Eric Chanel. Eric, if you want to say hello.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Rick, for taking the time to take us through the HT today.
Thank you, Eric. Eric is the product manager for the OsmoTECH Bio Osmometer line. Well, I couldn't say that very well. And he'll, like I said, he'll be monitoring the chat once we get along to that. I'm Rick Zampa. I'm the application specialist, and let's get started. So first of all, we'd love to hear your questions. And I mentioned Eric will be monitoring the chat. Please put all your questions in either the chat, or I believe we have a questions and answers section today as well. So either place, put your questions in there. We will either get to them during the presentation. Eric will ask me to answer some questions, or he'll be answering them on the side, or we'll get to them somewhere along the way. At the end, we should always have some time left from there. All right. So Advanced Instruments, let's just a little background on Advanced Instruments. Advanced Instruments is a 70-year-old company now. We just had our 70th anniversary. And we're experts in osmolality testing. We developed the first osmometers, yes, 70 years ago. We're also experts in cell line development technology and liquid handling quality assurance technology. We are headquartered in Norwood, Massachusetts, which is outside of Boston. We have offices in Westbrook in Maine and Winborne in the UK. We have a large installed base of instrumentation around the world in over 90 countries. We have direct offices in, let's see now, we have it in the Benelux, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, France, and I believe that's it. In the UK, as I said before, we have an office there. We have dedicated distributors in the rest of the world who are there to help you, as well as our direct offices in all of the locations mentioned. So let's move on. So Advanced Instruments currently offers 4 different product lines that are utilized in the biopharmaceutical space. Today we're going to focus on the OsmoTECH osmometers and their portfolio, and specifically the OsmoTECH HT. We also have our Solentum product group, which is used for cell line development and assurance of clonality. We have the Inoxamat product line, which is used for anaerobic bacteria culturing. And finally, we have our TEL product line, which is used for automated liquid handler volume verification and pipette volume verification and calibration. These products all supported by our local service teams, field service engineers, and you can have contracts on those instruments to do the maintenance and upkeep, as well as we offer services for validation, revalidation, to ensure that you meet all your regulatory requirements for your particular country or set of regulatory organizations. Now focusing on the OsmoTECH osmometers, let's discuss some of the applications of osmolality testing in the biological development and manufacturing processes. Starting with cell line development and through cell culture scale-up, osmolality can be used to confirm the concentration of the media and the feeds to help you gain insight into optimizing your scale-up steps. In downstream purification workflows, osmolality is used to confirm buffer concentrations, ensure buffer exchange, and measure the concentration of the drug substance. And finally, in formulation, all the way from development through final fill and finish, osmolality is a critical quality attribute that provides information on the identity, safety, stability, and purity of the drug products. Obviously, if you're doing injectable drugs, the osmolality is a critical quality attribute to assure that you're getting into the physiological range so as not to cause pain or irritation at the injection site. So we'll move on now. So make sure I got that. Osmometer selection considerations. Now there are 6 criteria up here, and this is in no particular order, but these are some of the things you should take into account when looking for an osmometer and what would be needed in your particular process flow. Obviously, ease of use. You want something that's very easy to use, simple to operate, and that you can take care of very easily. Performance. You always want to have great performance. We make the instruments with the best performance in the marketplace. Volume requirement. Always important, particularly when you're looking at your early development steps, when you don't have much sample volume. We have instruments that go down to 20 microliters, and up to as high as required of 40 microliters. Testing time, we have the quickest testing times in the marketplace. We go from 90 seconds up to about 2.5 minutes for our high range instruments, for going up to 4,000 milliosmoles. Data management, how are you going to manage your data? Is it secure? Is it meet the regulatory needs? Is it meet the data integrity and compliance issues that you have in your particular region? And finally, regulatory compliance. Are you able to meet the regulatory needs of your particular organizations, whether that be the JP, the EP, the USP, or any other of the pharmacopoeias, as well as your EU regulations or your FDA regulations. All of our instruments are able to meet these particular requirements, and we'll just take a quick overview of that now. Oops, that went one too far. So the OsmoTECH portfolio of osmometers consists of 3 different units. We're going to talk about the OsmoTECH HT today in detail, but the other 2 instruments are the OsmoTECH XT. The XT is our widest range osmometer with a range of 0 to 4,000 milliosmoles. We also have the OsmoTECH Pro. That is our multi-sample instrument, which can load 20 samples at one time and walk away and let those run. All of our instruments are easy to use and fast, as you can see, anywhere from 90 to 120 seconds, it says there, but for the XT, it goes up to a little bit higher in the high range. They have flexible data management capabilities, the ability to connect either through a LAN network, ELN, LIM system, allows you to control your data and manage your data off the instrument once you've gotten your test results. Robust data compliance, electronic signatures for approvals, so you can comply with 21 CFR Part 11 of the FDA or EU Annex 11, and the Chinese drug record requirements can be met with these electronic signatures. We also have a complete and comprehensive audit trail that will give you everything you need to know about the instrument and allows you to go back and check if any changes were made on that instrument. Right. So this is the OsmoTECH HT. We're going to get into this in a little bit more detail here in a few minutes. It's the only plate-based micro-osmometer available in the marketplace. So we use a 96-well microtiter plate to introduce the samples into the instrument. The minimum sample volume is 40 microliters, and it can perform up to 1,000 tests before requiring a change in the consumables. And you can configure the settings for any part of your process, whether it's a GMP environment or all the way down to your research organizations where you may not need as strict requirements for your data logging or your data management or your compliance. So far, are there any questions we can answer for you at this point? If not, I'm going to switch off cameras and move around to the instrument, and we'll get started with the actual demonstration. Again, please don't hesitate to put your questions in either the Q&A section or in the chat section so that we can answer them as we go along. All right.
Yeah, no questions yet, Rick. So
great,
feel
thanks,
free to
Eric.
move ahead. Yep.
Okay, stop sharing. Oh, I just saw something pop up, Eric.
And the question is, does the OsmoTECH XT meet 21 CFR Part 11?
Yes, it does.
Yes, very much so.
Yes, it does. Okay. All right, none.
Rick, HT, the plates, are they flat bottom or are they round bottom?
They are actually a conical bottom. When I get off to the instrument, which I see I have, you should be able to see the instrument now, I think. Oh, wait, nope.
Yes, we can. We see the overhead view.
You do see the overhead view? Okay.
Yeah. There, now it's in focus.
Why am I still seeing that? Hold on. Hold on, I gotta.
Rick, we see it spotlighted on the HT.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to, so I can see what I'm doing. Eric, understood. I want to be able to see the same thing you guys are seeing so I can see. Sorry about this, people. There we go. Now, and have you spotlighted it, you said, Eric?
It is spotlighted, yes.
It is spotlight. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I apologize for this slight bit of technical issues there. But this is the OsmoTECH HT instrument we have here. As you can see, the instrument here, right here, you have a large touch screen display here. You have the belt where we're going to load in the the plate for the testing. Down here you have a drawer which is used for your waste bottle and your system cleaning fluid. I think you can see that. Also have your waste bin over here where your used sample cups will go into, as well as your used plates when your plates are used. You'll notice it went to red there. I don't think you can see that, but when the drawer is open, it tells you that the drawer is open. You need to close it to start your testing. Over here on this side is our osmometer module where the testing is done. We're going to get a better look at that later when we start the testing, and I'll explain more about that. Close that up as well. So this is the OsmoTECH HT, I almost said XT, osmometer, and we're going to go into more detail on these screens in just a minute. What I want to do now is just talk a little bit about the consumables that comes with the instrument. So this is the consumables package that comes with the instrument. Let me move that over here. So you get 11 96 position well plates. So you get 11 of these plates here. Of these plates here, and that shows you one with the evaporation cover on it there. You get 22 evaporation covers. So again, the evaporation cover that goes on this. So if you're loading the whole plate, you put that evaporation cover on, assures that you don't have any evaporation along the time of the testing. You get probe cleaners in this. And the probe cleaners are used for when you need to do some maintenance on the system. And these probe cleaners are used when in the osmometer module to assure that you do your maintenance with the probe every once in a while. And this is what the evaporation covers look like before you put them on to the plate. Finally, you also get in the kit, you get a hazardous waste bag, which you saw in the drawer there, and that's what comes in the consumables kit. The other thing that you have is you have your sample cups here. There's 1,000 sample cups in this bag. Those get loaded in the top of the instrument here. You just open the bag, dump it in, and you load 1,000 tests, and you can run the instrument for 1,000 tests before you have to do any other maintenance. We also have our cleaning reel. The cleaning reel goes in the osmometer module over here, and I'll show you where that's at a little bit later when we open up that and get a good shot in there. And that cleans the sample probe between each test, allowing you to be assured that there's no carryover between your tests. You have your system cleaning fluid here, which is in the drawer here, which comes with the instrument. That's also good for 1,000 tests. Finally, we have our calibration set and verification set here, calibration and verification set. So you have your calibrators, you have 2 of each of the calibrators and 2 of your 290 reference solution, and allows you to run the calibrations on the instrument with from one package here as opposed to multiple packages. Also, what comes with the instrument is the calibration plate or calibration and verification plate. Allows you to load your calibrators into the instrument, into the plate, load your verification standard. You load that onto the instrument like so. You push the calibration button, and it allows you to calibrate the instrument and walk away and calibrate the instrument. So that is the consumables that come with the instrument. You also, just one more, we get a little roller here, which can be used to make sure you've sealed the plate with the evaporation cover. So with that being said, let's take a closer look at the instrument here. And let's zoom into, okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just run a couple of tests for you, and then we're going to be able to take a look at the instrument, and then we'll get into some of the menus. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take my plate, and I've already loaded the plate here. I've got a couple of samples, and I'm going to put it on the instrument, and I'm going to hit the load button. So the instrument is going to move the plate in. There's a barcode on the back side of the plate that the instrument is going to read. And it's going to be able, and what that's used for is to assure that you can use the whole plate. So by reading that barcode, it's going to tell me which positions on the plate have already been used or haven't been used. And then I can choose the ones that are open for my next testing. So it's verifying the plate, it's reading the plate. Once it's done that, it's going to bring up what we call a template. I'm going to choose the positions that I want to run, which I've loaded in, oops, not 9, 7, and 8. So now you can see here, it shows that those positions were already used. I'm going to run those positions. So all I do is hit start. Next thing is going to come up, it's going to ask me what I want to do with this 96 well plate when I'm done with testing. Dispose of the plate after test? No, because I have not finished using it and I want to bring it back out and fill more positions in it. Tests per sample, I can run up to 3 replicates out of each well. I have only 40 microliters in there now. If I were to run 3 samples, I'd have to put 180 microliters into each well. So 40 microliters is the minimum volume to run a test out of the plate, and then 180 would be to run 3 replicates. Continuous plate testing, no, I've only got 1 plate. Continuous plate testing would be if I were going to load on 2 plates. So I load the first plate in, then I put the second plate on, which allows you to run 2 full plates, which is about 6.5 hours of testing. So you could put those in, walk away in the evening, and let it run all night. And remote control, I'm not remote controlling it. I'm doing everything here locally. Then I'm going to hit next. So now the system will. So what I'm going to do here, excuse my reach. This is going to stop things for a second. Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm going to switch over to another camera here quickly. Hopefully, there we go. So this is the osmometer module. And what you can see is our plate here. You can see our pipette over here is pipetting the sample out of the first position well that we're looking at, which would be A7. It's then going to pipette the sample into a sample cup over here on this side. You can see the pipette moving over now. Sample cup moves into position. The pipette's going to move in, going to move down. It's going to pipette the sample in there. As we're waiting, this is your cleaning reel that I mentioned earlier, where it punches through this after every test sample and cleans after every test sample. That's where it's going to clean between the samples. We've now pipetted the sample in. The system is now cleaning the pipette system over here in the cleaning well. It's pumping cleaning solution through the pipette well, as well as it's in a it's through the pipette into a well, and it's cleaning both the inside and the outside of the pipette at this point. It's completed that. Our sample is moved over into the position. You can see this sample probe moving down into the sample cup. And now our sample has started testing. So now we're going to move back over here. So now you can see our status bar here. We're about 41% through the test now. We're testing position A7, as you can see here. And once we get up into the 70% range, you'll hear a knocking sound, or maybe you'll hear it, maybe you won't. But what that is that's the crystallization of the sample. So what we're doing now is we're driving the sample down through its freezing point, down to a set temperature in the instrument. Once we get to that set temperature, we initiate the crystallization of the sample. All the time where we're below this freezing point of the sample is liquid. That's why we initiate the crystallization. That causes the sample to freeze, goes up to its true freezing point. We then measure that freezing point, convert that to osmolality, and display that on the screen for you. So we're at about 82, 83% here. We should be finishing up our test here shortly. You can see also on the display, there we go. You can see also on the display now that I've zoomed in, I hope. You can see how many sample cups are in the system, how many cleans are left on the reel, it shows you we have 8 plates left, and it shows you the volumes of both the cleaning solution and the waste bottle. So now the test is completed. It's doing its cleaning of the sample probe, and we got a 290, and I was running a 290, which is wonderful. We have one more test to run. We're going to let that run through. And while that test is running, what I can do is I will go through a couple of the little things on the display here, as I was just talking about, and give you a little more detail on that.
Rick, if you want, while we're waiting, we have a question you can address.
Sure.
All right, so for calibration solution, the question is, can it be only the 4 that you mentioned for the calibration, or can another range be used for calibration?
No, it is the calibration standards are set in the instrument, so it is those 4 that I showed. So that would be the, as you can see here, the I hope you can see that. My screen looks a little dark from here, but 0, 300, 850, and 250. So that gives you calibration across the entire range of the instrument, which is 0 to 2,000 milliosmoles, and assures accuracy and repeatability throughout that entire range. So there is no choice. You cannot choose which calibration standards you want to use. However, we do guarantee the accuracy and repeatability across the entire range with those 4 calibrators. Okay. So is there any other questions, Eric, that we need to answer at this point?
There are none that need to be brought up right now, so thanks.
Okay. So just to get back to the display then, here you can see there's the sample tube indicator that tells me I have 751 more sample tubes in the hopper here. And this is a way just to make sure you're managing your inventory, assure that once you get down below a certain level, you make sure you have sample tubes in place to refill the system. Same thing with the cleaning reel here. It says they have 762 of those available. So again, just monitoring your inventory. The number of plates left, as I said, the system comes with 11 plates. We've used 8 of those plates up already. And then our cleaning fluid in our waste bottle shows you how much is left in the cleaning fluid, so you know when to change that. You also have over here an indicator that shows you if any of your doors are open. I have one door open, but I've overridden the system. I'm not going to tell you how to do that, but it's just so we can do that for the demonstration purposes. We have our LAN button here, which shows whether we're connected to the LAN network. Okay, and so we got a 291 on our next sample, so that's great to see. So just as a note here, I mentioned that we have the evaporation covers. I had loaded up this sample a little over an hour ago and put the evaporation cover on with the 290 reference solutions. You see we got a 290 and a 291. So you can see, yes, a little over an hour, there was absolutely no evaporation in the system by putting that evaporation cover on, which shows you exactly what you want to see. So now I'm just going to back out for a second here. You can see our plate now has come back out of the system, which is what I told it to do, so that I can reuse more positions in the system. So I'm going to just remove that for now. And now we'll go back to the zoomed in screen view. Okay, so we talked about the display here. You can see we have the load button, which I use to load the plate. We have our plate template here. We're going to talk about templates in a minute. We also have a stat function. The stat function allows you to load a sample in that is a rush sample if you need to, while a plate is running. What that allows you to do is, if you hit the stat button, it will finish testing whatever position it's in. And then what it will do is it will pick up a sample cup, and you can see, I don't know if you can read that there, but that says stat. It will move a sample cup over to this position out here. You'll be able to load the sample into the sample cup, hit the start button, and it will run that sample, and then it will go back and continue running the plate which you have in there. So that's the stat functionality. So now let's go into the menus here. So here we have the menus. We have our results database. We have our events database, which is our audit trail, calibration, templates, consumables, verification, settings, and diagnostics. Way here. What I want to do first is go into the settings functionality first. Okay, for some reason my finger hit the button weird. I don't know what happened there. So anyway, so in our settings function, we have a number of different things here. Quickly, I just want to talk about date and time capabilities. So we're going to log in. This is all part of your data security and integrity. I have to log in. Geez, what did I just type? Hold on. There we go. As part of your data security and data integrity, every menu that I go into, I have to log into. This is to assure that if any changes are made, you're always assured you know who did it, when they did it, and how they did it. The one thing I want to point out here is you have the capability to put in your date and time here, or you can use a time server. So you can use an SNTP's time server off of your network and automatically load the time, or automatically load the time to the instrument from your network to ensure that all the instruments are on the same time in your laboratory. I'm just going to exit out of this. You also have the capability, if you're outside, this is set up in the US time format, you can set it up in 24-hour format, or you can set it in local area date and time configurations as well. So first thing I want to talk about is users. So if you're going to set this up for a GMP environment, or for any environment for that matter, and you want to know who's doing the testing, you want to have users logged into the system. So what we do is we want to log into the system. Again, we're logging into every menu item so that we can ensure that we get the proper documentation into the audit trail when we go to talk about that. So you can see here we only have 2 users added to the system, the administrator and the service account. If I hit the add button, it's going to tell me to put in a user ID, a password, choose the level of access I want that user to have. The instrument has 3 levels of user access. You have operator, you have supervisor, and administrator. I'm logged in as the administrator right now. Administrator has access to everything in the instrument. Therefore, I can change anything in the instrument I want, but you would only have 1 or 2 administrators, and then you'd have operators and supervisors. As the administrator, I can also determine what level of access the operators and supervisors have, and I'll show you that in a second here. So you can load users onto the instrument manually through the touch screen here, or we can go into the options button, and you can load your users through your LDAP system or your Active Directory. This allows your users to use their Windows login or their computer login that they log in every day into their system as the login on the instrument as well. This reduces the number of passwords and usernames you have to remember and allows for easier access to the instrument. You would enable this here. Your IT department would set up the security groups, put people's usernames and passwords in there, and then they'd have access to the instrument. Another thing you see on this menu is passwords. This is where you would set up your password strength if you were manually entering the users on the instrument through the touchscreen display. This allows you to choose just how many characters, what type of characters, allows you to set up when passwords expire. If you're using LDAP, all of that is still managed by your IT department under their rules and regulations for your Windows or your daily user logins. Exit out of this menu, exit out of there. So that's how you add users and how you would set up your user functionality for the instrument. So then we're going to go into restrictions. And restrictions is how you set up the testing capabilities on the instrument. So as we were talking about earlier, you may want to have it set up so that you have to log in to run a test. You may want to require a sample ID. You may want to have people log in every time they run a test. Like I said, log in every time they run a test. They require a sample ID. Or maybe you just want a sample ID, or maybe you just want a user login. So here's where we're going to set up all of that functionality, as well as this is where I set up my access for my operators and my supervisors. So you can see here, you have supervisors, you have operators, and you can see the different levels of access that they might have or don't have. So, I mean, I can choose to say, okay, the supervisor right now has access to change networking. I don't want to have them do that. So I can uncheck that. I hit save. It's going to ask me why I'm making that change. It's very important. Part of the audit trail system is this a reason for changing something in the system. This is an optional item, but I always recommend that customers turn it on, because if you ever get audited and the auditor looks at the instrument and says, hey, why did you make this change on June 24th in 2025, and this is December or maybe next year, and you'll have to go back and try and figure out why you made that change. If this instrument's already in there, if this information's already in there in the audit trail, they'll look at it, they'll see why, and you can move on and not have to worry about it. So I'm just going to put demo in here and then save that to the system. And then we can, did I hit it? Okay, so save that to the system, and now we've made that change to the system. So the next thing we're going to look at is the testing functionality. And right now you can see at the top there, it says enable administrators access to perform testing. That's a button that we have put in there. Very rarely are administrators allowed to do testing in most organizations. They're there to set up the instrument, make sure it's set up properly. But in our particular case here, since we want to be able to show you everything on the instrument, we're allowing ourselves to run testing here on the instrument. This is also where you would require a user ID and sample ID for testing. I have both of those turned off. If I wanted to turn those on now, I could click both those buttons. Again, I would have to hit save. I'm not going to turn that on right now, but show you what that would show you that that's capable. Or I could just use one of those. Also gives you the capability of setting up if you want to use a position order for displaying your results. You can use a number first, or you can use your letter first on your 96 well plate format. Oh, auditing. The last thing is auditing. This is your electronic signature functionality. This is where you would turn on whether you want to have each test result reviewed and approved. You can do both. You can do none. You can do one or the other. It's all up to you. You can set it up however your process works. Like I said, if you're in a GMP environment, in a quality control or something like that, you'd want to turn this signature capability on, as well as all the user logins and sample ID information. If you're in a research or a formulation early development type situation, you don't have to turn on any of this, but you can still get all your information from the system. So you can see you can review results and choose who there is to review. You can require signatures on all comments, or require comment on all signatures, I should say. And then you can require reason for change in all settings. I've got that turned on, as I mentioned. You can also record every login and login out on the system if you would like to. Exit out of that. So that's the restrictions of setting up your testing. Now we want to talk about how we're going to manage our data. Now, one thing that's important to understand is that the instrument, now we start talking and forget to log in. The instrument for the audit trail and the results database has unlimited data storage, meaning that you can use the instrument for as long as, for the life of the instrument, you'll never fill up the memory in the system for your results database or your audit trail. It's also unlimited storage for your users and for your controls as well. However, these can be deleted if you want to. The audit trail and the results database cannot be deleted, cannot be modified, cannot be changed. You can't do anything to them. You can just export them off of the system. When I say export them, you're just taking a copy of the data, and then you can use that data however you want outside of the system. But the source of the data always stays on the instrument, and that is the true source of the data if you ever were in an audit situation. Eric, I think you told me one time you had calculated how many results these things will store.
Yeah, it was, I think it was well over 5 million. I remember you had to do, it was 5,000. If you did 50 tests per day, it would take 5,400 years to fill it up.
Yeah, I know, it was a ridiculous amount of time. So that's just as a understanding of how much data you can actually store on the system. Thank you, Eric. So anyways,
welcome.
This is our export functionality. So as I said, the data always stays on the instrument. This meets your data integrity requirements because you have to have the original source of the data, and the original source of the data is the instrument. So data export is enabled. As you can see, we can export as a CSV or a PDF file. We can choose which databases we want to export and where we want to send it to, whether it's a USB or to a network folder. And this is how you would just export your data if you wanted to export your data. If you're going to set up your system to automatically export the data, that would be done through your local area network or your ELN, and I'll show you where that is in a second. We also have a database backup function. And the difference between the database backup function and exporting the databases out is the database backup function actually backs up the configuration files as well. So also here you would set up where you want to send it to. You could do a manual backup, you could do a scheduled backup, or you can do a synchronous backup. The scheduled backup, as it sounds like, is once a day, week, or month. The difference between that and a synchronous backup, is once every 5 to 60 minutes. Synchronous backup is one continuous file that gets rewritten every time you do a backup. The scheduled backup would be, say, if you're doing it once a month, 12 individual backup files. And it's really a matter of your IT department's preferences as to how they want these backup files stored so that they can use them at a later date if needed. So as I said, the backup files also store the configuration files, which if there was ever a catastrophic failure, you could then take your last backup file, go to the import functionality, and import your last backup file back to the instrument and be up and running it from that point in time. We also have results export functionality. And what this allows you to do is export your results as a PDF file. So you can choose to have one PDF file per test or one PDF file per run. So if you're running 48 wells, you could either have 48 PDFs or one PDF with the 48 results on it. And finally, templates, which we're going to talk about a little bit further. And this is just where you would be able to load the template from, either a USB or a network folder. And as I said, I'll talk about templates in a minute here because that's one of the things that makes it easy to use this instrument. So that's data management. Networking, as I mentioned briefly there, if you're going to connect the system to your network, you would probably do it through a local area network connection. And this is where you would set that up, or where you would set up your other functionality. So you have your local area network capabilities here, and this would allow you to set up folders, automatically load your results database to a folder, back up the system, as I said, either through synchronous or time schedule, and allow you to manage your data that way. You also have OPC-UA, and OPC-UA is a machine language, for lack of a better word, that allows for true bidirectional communication with the instrument. What this would allow you to do is communicate directly to the instrument, load your templates into the system remotely, start testing remotely, get your data, manage the system remotely through a different system. This allows you, if you're in an automated scenario where you might have robotics and things and you wanted to manage it and put it into a robotic system or some type of conveyor system, you could do that through the OPC-UA connectivity capabilities. A web server, this is just a way to view your data, your results database on a website, a local website. Your IT people would set up a web address for it, and then you'll just be able to view the data as the data comes in. Sit out of there. So, okay, so we talked about date and time, users, data management, restrictions, and networking. There's controls.
Rick, while we're talking about users, I actually have a question about that came in, if you'd like to address. So for user ID, are they able to use 1D and 2D barcodes on the tag to be able to upload user IDs?
For user IDs, so there is not a barcode reader that can be used to read a user ID. You could set up a secondary barcode scanner, but the only barcode is well, you can't see that from here. Hold on. The only barcode reader right now is here on this part of the instrument where it's reading the barcode on the plate. However, for sample IDs, if you were using a secondary barcode, it could be a 1D or 2D barcode.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
Yep. Okay. Date and time, language restrictions, system update. The rest of the stuff we're not going to talk about right now. So we're going to step back a point here. We're going to go into some of the other things I wanted to talk about here. So I mentioned templates earlier. So let's talk about templates now. So templates is the ability to set up your testing for each plate prior to putting the plate on the instrument. As you saw when I started the test previously, I put it in there. I had to then select the wells I was going to test out of, and then I ran the tests. So, well, there's no templates in here. There used to be templates in here. So anyways, if I had templates in here, what I'd be able to show you is that you can set up the template. So say you're going to, every time you run a test, you're going to run the same samples. You're going to run them in the same positions. You would create a template. So you would go to the template creation. You would choose, say, anyways, You would choose the positions you're going to test. If you were going to put a sample ID in, then you would do this. Then click. From an angle, I can never get the button to press. There we go. You would enter your sample ID, and every time you need to run these samples, you would just pull this template up when you loaded your plate in, say run this template, and it would allow you to then run the same thing every time. I'm going to exit out of this. I'm not going to save. No. Because you're going to have templates like that. You can also upload templates from remotely from your network or from a USB. And then you create these in a document and you load them in and you automatically view. Then you can automatically upload those very, very easily. You can view the templates if there were any in here. You can delete them. And then we're just going to exit out at this point. So that's templates. It makes it very, very easy to run the instrument because if you're running the same testing all the time, it's very easy to then load a template and run as you go. Calibration, as I mentioned, it comes with the calibration cassette here. This is your calibration cassette. You would enter into the calibration function. It's then going to walk us through a couple of steps. We then start the calibration and then we run the calibration. So it's a little calibration and verification set. I would do that and then start the test. Great thing about the system is I can exit out of here. I have not made any changes to the system or changed the calibration functionality. It maintains its old calibration until it says calibration complete and then updates the data from there. You can also run just a verification using the same plate. You can choose, you would put just one ampule in here when the verification point, you would hit next, and then you can choose which verification standard you want to use here in the next section. Any of the many calibration or standards that we have available you can use. In this particular case, we have it set up for the 290 reference solution. It would run 5 replicates and then give you the statistics on that verification for you. I'm going to exit out of that. So that's calibration and verification. Important thing to understand, calibration is required only once per year on our instruments. These instruments are very, very stable and robust. We don't expect the calibration to go out of range. And it probably be done when you do your PM every year on the instrument. Be the most common time to do that. Whoops. So let's go back there. We talked about calibration and verification. Oh, the other thing, I'll do it in another menu when I have other things. I talked about templates. Consumables, when you need to reload your consumables, you would go in there, put in the new part numbers, and off you go. Then finally, let's talk about our results database, show you where the results are stored. So the results database is, as I said, unlimited data storage, and for the life of the instrument, stores all your test results in the system. You can see our 290 and 291 here at the top that we had here. So we can then choose several of these results here, and we can run statistics on those if we want to. So statistics for the 3 samples, the mean is 290, standard deviation is 1, and a CVE of 0.34%. You can export that if you want, exit out. You clear it by a little button here at the top. There's 3 in there. It's pretty much like an Excel spreadsheet. You can sort by any one of the columns. You can search the system. You can search by sample ID, position, plate ID, any other number of situations there. And you can see all of the different test results you have in here. You can print from here, and you can export the results from here as well. You can export only 1 or 2 results, or you can export the entire database. Finally, we're going to go into the Advanced database. And the Advanced database is the audit trail for the system. As I mentioned, the audit trail also has unlimited data storage and the capabilities to store every every event that's happened on the instrument since you started running the instrument. So we're waiting for that to load. Did I hit the button? There we go. Didn't hit the button. So this is our events database. So what you can see here is you can see the 2 changes the changes I made here. I changed the supervisor access to network setting from on to off, and it tells me why I made that change. You can also see that we retrieved the plate that we ran there. The system hood was open when I opened it before I did that. The waste bin was open. So it tells you everything that's gone on in the instrument and what's happened as all changes, all potential, I don't want to call them errors, like the doors opening, tells you it shows you when consumables have been changed and things like that. So everything is stored here for the instrument so that you always know what's happened to the instrument if you're looking at any particular issues going on. So I want to go back, go to settings. So the one thing I did want to talk about that I forgot to talk about earlier is you can see these keys here in the display. And you see the red keys. The red keys means only the administrator has access to that. The gold key means only I hit that accidentally. Gold key means only the supervisor and administrator have access. And if it has a gold and a silver key, that means everybody has access, operators, supervisors, and administrators. So that's just the hierarchy of once you go into the system, you know who has access to what, and tells you if you want to change that access so that maybe you want to change the date and time capability, you can go in and make those changes. Results, events, calibration. So that is the overview of the instrument. Now, do we have any questions that we can answer for anybody?
So Rick, no, I've been answering most of them in the chat directly. One,
Good
if
job.
you want to weigh in, if you want to weigh in, you're welcome to. There's a back and forth a little bit about if the system reads a slightly or a different value than an established method, are they able to adjust the parameters to essentially line up their established method with our results? And I'm saying my understanding is that we have it's based on our calibration, and that's what we consider the accurate result. Would that be and that's not something that can be adjusted. Would that be a fair statement?
That sounds correct, although I'm a little confused on the question as what they mean if it's outside of the expected or outside of the specifications. It sounds like you answered it.
Yeah. It's all right. It's I'd say we can take it offline as well if we want to get into more detail as well. So it should be okay though, I think, from our back and forth.
Let's take that one offline because I'd like to understand that a little bit better. I just saw something popped up. Can the events database be saved indefinitely? Yes, the events database can be saved indefinitely. Unlimited data storage, millions of results can be saved in there. Are there any other questions?
That is it. Again, the other ones I've answered throughout the chat, so I think we're all set. If there's any other ones, please feel free to drop them in. Let me just check the Q&A side. Nope, people have been using the chat, which is great.
Super.
I think that is it.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions, everybody, I thank you for your time today. And if you do have any further questions or want to get into a little more detail on anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Eric or any of your local area key account manager, and we'll be happy to chat with you further and answer any further questions you have. So with that, I will say thank you again and have a great day.